Hello, everybody. Welcome to NJ Thrive's Small Business Webinars. Today is Thursday, February 15th, and you are attending our weekly webinar created to help New Jersey small business owners start, grow, and thrive. I am your host, Isma Sheikh, the consultant here at NJSBDC. And NJSBDC stands for New Jersey Small Business Development Centers. We are a network, a statewide program powered by the SBA, stands for Small Business Administration, and partners to help small businesses in New Jersey with three main things. Those are no-cost small business consulting, training and events starting at $0, just like this one that you're attending, and exclusive small business resources. On the map there, you will see that is the state of New Jersey, of course, divided up into all the counties. And in some counties, you'll see that there are little SBDC logos, and that is where our regional centers are located. So if you ever want to go in person, go say hi, make an appointment at NJSBDC.com and pop in and say hi. One more thing to mention, if you are new here, we appreciate you coming in, taking your time to attend this webinar, and we hope you'll stick by with us. If you have been attending our webinars, thank you so much for your support. Do let us know in the chat where you're from, what you do, any contact information, social media, anything that you want to share about your business. I always like to say you never know who you find, your supporter, cheerleader, investor, partner. So feel free to go into the chat and say hi. Also, if you can hear me and see me okay, just put a 1 in the chat. So what do we have on the agenda today? We have a couple of headlines to go through. These are some things that we like to share that is happening in the small business community here in New Jersey, so you are up to date. Then we have our presentation from our speaker, and then we'll have a Q&A session right after the presentation. So these are the three headlines that I'd like to share with you today. These headlines, I'll go through them briefly right now, and all the links for these headlines will be shared in the chat. All right, so the first is a press release from the SBA. SBA unveils updated equity action plan to advance the Biden-Harris administration's commitment to investing in equity. Updates focus on providing access to capital, entrepreneurial support services, creating economic opportunities, advancing our national economy. So for more than 33 million small businesses and startups, this equity plan outlines actionable steps the agency will take to advance the commitment to investing in equity, tailoring business counseling, training, and other services, increasing access to disaster assistance for underserved communities. All right, and the equity plan outlines the following strategies, such as improve access to loan capital, procurement and contracting opportunities, very important, improve access to disaster assistance, also very important, improve access to business counseling, trainings, and services, just like the NJSBDC offering these services, improving access to investment capital. So if you'd like to read further and in detail, there is lots of links, so feel free to check this out. Next is a press release from NJEDA. NJEDA is a great resource that you should continuously check and keep up to date with. New Jersey Economic Development Authority. It's a press release. We're great partners. This is released just 3 days ago. Aspire tax credits approved to advance mixed-use development anchored by NJPAC. Development will connect NJPAC to your community via 577,000 plus square feet of residential, office, retail, arts, and community space. Very cool. This is a new work for Aspire program. And let's see. So was approved for an award of up to 60% of total eligible project costs, not to exceed almost 2 million in total, 200 million in total, excuse me. And we have quotes here from all the important people. All right, so you can read this on our own. Press release from NJEDA, February 9th. NJEDA approves phase 2 of child care facilities improvement program. Phase 1 of the program has approved over $27 million in funding for 134 child care centers to date. New Jersey is home to over 1,300 registered FCCs. serving 6,500 children across all 21 counties. And this phase 2 is the $5 million program, providing grants of up to $10,000 and $20,000 to registered FCCs to purchase furniture, fixtures, equipment, supporting the environment of health, safety, accessibility, and quality in the childcare. All right, so if you are an FCC, this is very important. You should look into it. Highly recommend. Again, all the links will be shared in the chat. Things to keep in mind, some housekeeping rules that we ask that you follow, we'll also follow. If you have questions, please put them in the Q&A box. If you put them in the Q&A box, we'll address them for sure in the Q&A session. If you put them in the chat, they might get lost. They'll probably get lost with all the comments and links that we like to share. Then we have a brief survey. Please fill that out. Please let us know if you like this webinar or any other webinars that you'd like to request. Once you do that, you'll receive the slides from the presenter. And this webinar is being recorded, so if you have to leave in between or if you'd like to rewatch, then it will be available on our YouTube channel and video library. That is enough from me. Let's welcome our presenter today, who is an SBDC Specialty Consultant, Jinni Rock-Bailey, for Human Resources, a guide for small business teams. Jinni is always here. She always rocks and does amazing webinars for us on multiple different topics, such as procurement. So if you're familiar, say hi. And Jinni, I'll stop sharing and you can start sharing.
Thank you so much. It's always good to work. Always great to work with you.
Likewise.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Again, I'm let me get my slideshow going here. And slideshow from the beginning. Okay, good. The topic is on HR for a guide for small businesses. Please excuse my voice. Something is trying to get in there. Hopefully it'll be gone before this webinar is over. But my intent today is to give you an overview of pertinent HR services, positions, and activities that HR teams, practitioners, and partners should avail themselves with. I have been in the business for a while, have seen many changes in HR, but what recently has been so exciting for me is the fact that not that we had COVID, obviously, but the position of HR practitioners became even more needed and essential during that time. And because of that, I do believe that that's why we're still in such demand and so obvious as a day-to-day partner in the business as we were then. And this is just a bit of my philosophy as an owner. I incorporate my best practices to ensure legal compliance. I help businesses establish and maintain effective HR departments. My focus throughout my practice is to make sure that communications is transparent and open within organizations, because once you realize that an issue may not be as difficult as you think it is within your organization, and you realize that communication would be the best way to solve this, then the dialogue gets better for both of you, for the employee, the owner, and employees in general. I wanted to give you an overview of the infrastructure of the challenges investing in people, because that's what HR is all about. It's providing.
Jinni, can I?
Certainly.
Sorry, I'm so sorry. Can I just stop you for a second?
Sure.
If you can, the slides are, I'm not seeing them move on my end.
Okay.
So maybe you can go to full screen.
Stop sharing.
No, you don't have to stop sharing. Okay. Just try to go to full screen and move the slides. Yeah, you can go to from beginning.
So sorry.
Or
can you see it
it's
now?
Okay.
Can you
yes,
see it?
and
okay.
Yes.
Let me do something with this here too, because I want to make sure that.
Okay, hopefully this is good for everyone else as well. Try moving the slides now.
Okay. Better?
Perfect. Yes.
Okay,
So you can
excellent,
move
excellent.
forward.
So,
Awesome.
and I really appreciate that. I really appreciate you stopping me, Usman, because you
No
see, I'm
problem.
ready, set, go.
Yes.
Into the presentation. I'm ready, set, go. Okay, so again, this is a little bit, about me and Rock-Bailey and what some of my values are. And again, I think that when you think about human resources and you think about serving people, I think it's important for you to see an overview of the infrastructure for human resources. Recruitment is key for us. Attracting the most qualified person, when you consider your values and cultural fit, and you use effective interviewing strategies, which I'm going to share with you. When you think about performance evaluations, you'll think about appraising and compensation, and there are different models that companies are using now to appraise and evaluate their employees. And I also think that when it comes to compensation, you just don't think of the whole number, you think of a range. I'm going to share that with you. Developing skills and changing behavior are key when it comes to performance evaluations. And I'll give you some tips on that. And we can't effectively give an evaluation without looking at generational differences, expectations, and experiences. And I think that's what's so key about human resources and where it is now. Another investing in people opportunity for businesses is employee benefits. Their expectations, big versus small companies. And so often small companies feel as if they can't offer employee benefits because first of all, they're not required to if you're under 50. And secondly, your revenue may not allow you to do it. But it doesn't mean that you can't recommend a benefit opportunity for your employees. Employee needs, balancing employees versus company needs. That's really important, especially for those owners who are out there in the audience. It's really important to think about how we need someone, but can the company afford them? Organizational justice is really key right now. And when I was preparing for this and I looked at what are the top HR essential issues. One of the top 5 is mental health and welfare. And that looks at the organizational justice and how we administer a full plan to make our companies healthy. So then you look at HR functions. We have resources in-house, we outsource, and what are some of those tools? And that's what I'm going to start to share with you right now. HR business teams were involved in the day-to-day long-term planning of the company. We speak the language of HR business leaders. We have an impact on employee investment. But what's key is because we're involved in the day-to-day long-term planning makes it more important for each one of us in HR to realize that we are involved in reducing turnover. And when we're focused on reducing turnover, we become money savers for your organization, whether you're an owner or an HR practitioner. So we ask ourselves these questions when we start to look for someone. When do I need to fill the position? Is it a new hire or a replacement? Are we projecting growth to merit the position? It's really important to think that you're ready to hire someone. But if you don't have the funds to do it, then maybe you should think twice. And then you have to look at what is going to provide those revenues or that revenue to bring someone on. It's either your service or your product. And so you look at, is it an increase in our services or is it an increase in the development of our product? These are the kinds of questions that HR owners especially, but practitioners in HR should be thinking when we're even asking the owner, should we bring someone on? It's very key. So how do you prepare? How do you prepare for the hire? I ask that every one of my clients have a position description or a list of essential functions. for many, many reasons. Most importantly, it allows the candidate to know what the expectations are. And it also allows them to see in those expectations, do I have the qualifications to do this? You also prepare by looking at your compensation schedules. Look at your compensation schedules by position. And when I think about ranges, I look at minimum, midpoint, and max. And when I look at it that way, I think I can bring someone at the very minimum. I can increase their salary if they are doing very well during the orientation period and place them in the midpoint. And then I can look how long it would take for this employee to get to the maximum of that position. And then the third real important thing is qualified internal candidates. It's so important for us to think about who inside is qualified for the position or needs just a little push for the position. Why is that? Promoting internal candidates, if you have the opportunity, is the best motivation and branding for your company. So you think of those kinds of things before you hire. What kind of business do I have? How do we define our growth? Are we ready for a short-term profit impact? These are also the questions that as owners, we ask ourselves. And when we look at what kind of business do we have, I'm a small business owner. I'm not looking to be big, but however, if an opportunity presented itself to me, one of the questions I would ask myself is, I like knowing everybody's name. Do I want 25 more people in here and I've got to ask somebody else who he is? These are the kinds of questions that we ask ourselves as we want to grow, as we decide we want to grow. Will it change our business model? And then we also have to look at how do we define growth? Is growth based on a short-term opportunity, like a good project that only lasts 6 months? Or is it based on steady, yearly opportunities? Or is it based on the opportunity of getting a contract, a federal government contract that could last for 5 years? But when you ask yourself these questions, you allow yourself to prepare for some things that may get in your way. So what I decided to do is I decided to give you some examples of professional recruitment firms in New Jersey, because so often we need the help. We as business owners in HR or HR team leaders may need the help of a recruitment firm to help you. And these ranks are the Fortune 500 for Forbes, and I just narrowed it down to New Jersey. But another reason why I wanted to give you this is I also didn't want you to think that you had to make these decisions on your own, because not only can they help you find the person, you can also use them for consultation in areas of where you may be able to find someone. This is a module that I use in a bigger presentation, because I think it's important for you to see what some of these online recruitment sources are. So I divided them up. I'm only giving you 4 of them in here because Indeed is the overall best recruitment source. And I've had a great opportunity with them. Even just finding someone who may know someone, I reach out to them on my LinkedIn page. Monsters is a runner-up, best overall. There's one for Glassdoor, best for employer insights. And there's this one called Snag a Job, and it's best for hourly jobs. But there are others also, and you can search for them. You can look for them. So I give this because I don't want you to think that you have to narrow your opportunity to reach the best and the most qualified candidate. This is really important. All questions should have a direct correlation to the position or the job that you're seeking. It's great to want to find out a little bit more about the candidate, but it's not the time to do it always when you're looking at them as a potential candidate for the position. So to make sure that you don't receive a yes/no answer when you're interviewing, you should always ask a question that's open-ended. use who, what, where, when, how. Or if you need to pull it out a little bit more, you can ask them, tell me a little bit about something. Because what is also beneficial in this space of interviewing is that you have 3 opportunities to interview someone, or 3, there are opportunities to interview them. And the opportunities are, you can ask them to describe a situation in which which is directly related to the position that they're interviewing for, but will allow you to see what kind of behavioral decisions they make. You can ask a general question. What did you enjoy most about your last job? I laugh at this because I had someone say, I liked my last job because it was good until it was bad, and I convinced people that we should all go to the beach. Well, that wasn't the person that wasn't the answer that I didn't want to hear. I didn't want to hear that answer, but I was so glad that I made the interviewing atmosphere so comfortable that they were very open with me and they shared it. No, they were not a candidate. Then you want to ask a job-specific question. So what does that look like? You want to make sure that the question is relative to the position that you're looking for and looking to fill. The candidate you're looking for to fill the position. So in human resources, a good question is, what HRIS would you recommend to our company? Human resource information systems, through CRMs as well, are very popular. But what I want you to get out of this is you have the opportunity to ask them these questions as long as you realize that you can only probe so much into their answers so you don't become discriminatory. So this gives you an idea of how close you can come. So then you get down to the offer. You found the perfect person. No, we don't want the perfect person. We want the most qualified person. So you have to be very careful how you offer them the position. And where the mistakes lie is when you offer them a position and you include in the position that you will be paid $200 million a year. Well, that's great. But if you don't include in it that your bi-weekly or weekly salary will be the overall amount of the annual is like a contract to an employee. And what it does is it allows them to think that if I leave within a year, I'm going to get the rest of that money. If I leave in 6 months, I'm going to get the balance of that $200 million. So it's very important that you state that they'll be paid bi-weekly or monthly. You want to include the effective date, that they're supposed to start. You want to include the position description, and I always have them sign it. And you can do all of this. I mean, it's good to do it, to use technology, but it's really important to make sure that you have the documents to support what you're giving them. Now, applications aren't mandatory, but why they're good is that they allow you to ask all questions legally. So if you're making your application up out there, you want to make sure that you're asking questions that are legal. Do you want to have a family? Illegal to ask that. What is your race? What is your gender? Illegal to ask those questions. Why? Because decisions are often made based on the answers of those questions alone. So you don't want to do that. You also want to include a confidentiality statement, which basically says that what you hear on the job does not really belong to you. It belongs to the company. You're to hold that information harmless. We own that information. And there's a lot of discussion out there now about how important are these confidentiality statements? Will they stand up in court? Well, regardless of that answer, what's important is it makes the employee think twice before they tell those trade secrets. So you want to make sure that you also have authorizations and references, because that's important. It's very important to have references. And what I ask for, 2 professional and 1 personal. It could be a friend, it could be a pastor, but I want 2 professionals and 1 from the last position. Unless you check that, you don't want us to ask, which is fine, because I usually, if it's a good candidate, I usually don't probe. So the next process and bringing this new hire into the organization is onboarding. And what is onboarding? Essentially, it's just a planned meeting between you and the new hire. And it's a meeting that introduces the new hire to the company and the mechanics of HR. This is when HR really gets to shine, because you allow them to know what your responsibility is as an HR, what the culture of the organization is, which you give them a taste of during the interview. But now it also allows you to ask them for more information, because they've already accepted the job. So if you don't look at your essential functions, if you don't look at the kinds of benefits that you offer as tools, I often look at them as the mechanics of the process, the mechanics of our discipline, but you can also look at them as the tools of HR. This is when it's really important to make sure that you have this information for them. So what does onboarding do? It reduces the cost of turnover. It increases productivity and morale. It saves time because it's a training opportunity. And the most important to me, and the response that I get from employees that we take through an onboarding process, is that it shows the employee that you value them. Because all employers aren't doing onboarding, especially small companies, because we think that we don't have the time to do it. But when you look at the questions, you review the questions that the employee has, you see that they're usually very well thought out, because during the onboarding process, you created an atmosphere which made them feel comfortable in making the decision to work for you. So I thought this next slide would be really helpful too. What are the kind of necessary documents that you need to collect or have them submit before the first day, depending on whether the position is remote or not? These are the most important documents that a candidate needs to bring. They need to have identification, and that can be a passport or driver's license. They need to show you their social security card or equivalent identification. And I don't have I-9 on this list, but it's very important because of naturalization and utilization. But an I-9 is really important, but these documents also support the request on the I-9. You want to make sure that they have their employment contract, if the position is for that, or their offer letter. And you got to be really important. You have to be really careful about employment contracts. Because if you're offering an employee an employment contract, then you can't have an employee handbook, because an employee handbook is not a contractual relationship, because New Jersey is an at-will state. And I didn't really need to get deep, but it's important, because I see clients that want to give an employee contract and then give a handbook. And in the handbook, it says this is not a contract. So be very, very careful about an employee contract. And I've basically seen them in higher level positions where there are bonuses. You want to look at the tax forms that you're to give the employee. A W-4 is equivalent for a W-2. And you want to give that W-4 to a part-timer who's working no more than up to 28 hours. And you want to give them to full-time employees. And you can give them to other employees or other types of employees that you have working for you. Per diems may require a W-4. If you have direct deposit, you want to make sure that you have their account number. And what I think is like really super duper important is an emergency contact sheet. It's really important now. I think it's always been important, but it's really important now because as an employer, you have to know where your employees are during the hours that you're accountable for them. So in lieu of an emergency contact form, you usually just have their cell phone number. But if they lose their cell phone number or it dies, how do you reach their next of kin? Not to say that the person dies, but say the phone dies, not the person. But how do you reach the person that they identify as the person that you should contact in the event that I have a medical emergency at work? Any relevant certifications or licenses are required that are required for the role are also to be included in those essential documents. Clear guidance and support are crucial for new employees to efficiently gather and submit documents during onboarding. And once you hire someone, that person has all the rights as an employee that's been there all along. And one which you've got to convey to them during the orientation period is the fact that you have a contact number where you can reach your boss, you can reach me. That's very important to them. But it's also important for them when you're offering them position, because then they really get to see that now I'm a part of this team. So I'm giving you some infrastructure items. I think an employee handbook and stated practices is mandatory for me, but it's not mandatory by law. An employee handbook is a very formal document that lays out the policies, and it also lays out the procedures. And it's also approved by an attorney or an HR practitioner. My client, I approve them for my client, but it's formal, it leaves no stone unturned, and it's timeless, but updated when laws are changed, as opposed to stated practices are often used based on an employee's or a supervisor's experience. And that's when it can get an organization in a lot of trouble. Because if you have two supervisors who have different ways of terminating people or offering disciplinary action, you have two very serious situations. So you want to make sure that you make the decision. And if you're not ready for a handbook, then you ensure that the practices that one is going to use, especially in a position like disciplinary action, is one that you approve. You want your salaries to be competitive, and you can find information about the position and what's competitive. But again, for your sake, have ranges, which gives you that wiggle room. If you're larger and you have individual departments that require departmental procedures, this is your time to do it. One we know of is a safety policy manual. You should also have some place for record retentions, so you don't keep records longer than necessary. The I-9 process is another one that you should have available, especially to not to managers because it's too personal, but for HR teams, you should know the I-9 process, and you should know what they can submit as identification and how you retain that information. Most of my clients keep it separate from their personnel files. Online, you can have a separate section for them. If you're using an online service like a Bambee or a Bamboo for HR, you really want to know what they're doing with those documents, because those are the ones that you have to retrieve immediately if there's a suit. You also need to have adherence to labor regulations, employment law, and DOL compliance. So how do you do that? One way that I recommend to clients in lieu of hiring a firm, but if you're starting out, Google Alerts are really important. And I don't know if you're familiar with Google Alerts, but you can set a Google alert for your state, other states that you have opportunities in, and have the topic be employment, employee relations, or employment laws for that state. And then you can also set the frequency in which you get this information. So you can have not a yeoman's, but you can have an idea of what changes are going on in those states about labor laws, safety, because they give it to you. It's unbelievable how much information that you can get, and it made you be just a taste, but will allow you to get more information and seek out more information about a discipline. One thing that's like hot on my list right now are the changes in the pregnancy laws and pregnancy leaves, and how that overlaps with paid sick time, or doesn't, or shouldn't, and it doesn't. But it gives you an idea of what's out there right now. So I'm gonna switch up a little from that. And I want you to know that 40% of employees reported, 40% of employers reported having transparent, open communication around compensation. So how do we see the difference in this? 5 years ago, it wasn't mandatory for employers to include salary ranges on their employment ads. Now you have to do it and also include it on your job descriptions, because you can no longer have employees feel as if they have violated some code by talking about their salaries. It's open to do that. And the end result was that 40% of employers reported having transparent, open communication around compensation. And the percentage was much lower prior to the passage of it. So I think it's important that you understand that. This is the quote that I live by. Train people well enough so they can leave. Treat them well enough so they don't want to. I mean, I think because we're in employment at will state, you can leave. I'm not happy here anymore. I'm leaving. Today's my last day. But as employers, we also have the right to use that doctrine as well. Employees have the right because nothing's holding them there. But since we want to have the best atmosphere for our employees, and when you think about the time and attention and training that you give them, you want to make sure that you're open to their conversation. You're open to the kinds of information that they want to share with you. It's happening in chats. It's happening during Zooms. It's happening since we're open now, networking opportunities. But I don't want them to leave because I have an attachment to them. But then I also think about the money that's been invested, because it's an investment. I think about the money that's invested in them. And so that leads me to delegation. When delegating is ineffective is when you're delegating to the wrong person. That's when it's ineffective. So you have to pivot. You have to look at, what should I be delegating? And so often we delegate those yucky things that we don't want to do, but that is not a motivator. Delegating those yucky things are not a motivator. You want to delegate those items, those functions that will allow you or an owner to work on that hot button item, to do more community service, to put the company in a position where your branding is seen in other places where it wasn't before, to engage in discussions with managers that you're not allowed to do because you're instead of delegating these assignments, you're giving them to someone else, or you're keeping them rather. So what do you delegate? You delegate a project, and you ensure that you have boundaries, that you have expectations, you have chats, you have the opportunity to allow the person you're delegating two, to meet with you to make sure that they're on the same page. When other employees see that, they want to be chosen. They want to be the chosen one to be delegated a prime opportunity. How to delegate? You don't always have to pick the star in your department, but so often we delegate these assignments to people who need assistance. So you're not going to delegate that person. And you look at how to delegate. You look at that identification by how they do their job. And there could be a few. So you could divide a project up. But so often we look at the person who, oh, they're not doing anything. Let me give them this. And it's a really big assignment. That's wrong. That is the wrong way to do it. You look at the person who's motivated, and maybe there's someone that asks. Give that person an opportunity. That's how you delegate. And when you look at the advantages of delegating, it increases the morale, confidence, and productivity of staff. It saves time. It identifies and confirms talent. So this gives me the opportunity to just share something with you. In March, we'll be doing a webinar on identifying talent and retaining it. So this is just a little place card for you. It shows staff that you have trust in them and their talents. I mean, it's the best advertisement for your company and your department, your business, because when you interview a candidate, you say, we are so excited about our program, our promotional program. Why are we excited? Because we promote people who want to do more, who are good at what they do. Where does that come from? Delegation. So the best practice tips in delegating, you can see this is a hot button item for me, is analyze your needs first, explore your options, cultivate trust, develop and prioritize assignment plans, document everything in the event, document everything because it's going to be great. But if there are some challenges, you want to make sure that you're not talking about those challenges off your head, but that you've documented it with the date and what the challenge was. And you want to make sure that you encourage them to use technology and communicate well and often. You're available to that person, okay? So I'm going to pivot again. Performance management. Why is performance management so important? And why is it successful? It encourages reward and recognition. It allows managers to see progress. It boosts employee engagement. Exchange of feedback is so important. And it's open communication. And I can say this because it's something that, we've lived through, but through COVID, we were able to look at different ways to explore performance reviews, performance management. Employers were so focused on the traditional, every 3 months, every 6 months, and a year. But when we started to look at people coming back, and some of you may have recognized this or experienced this, with the heaviness of that disaster, people weren't ready to be told in 6 months you're gonna have performance review. You better be ready. We're gonna talk about all the things that I've told you before. No. We weren't ready to lay that on people. So what happened is people decided to have chats, ongoing, yet could be consistent, but they're all ongoing chats. It wasn't something that's scheduled. It was less formal, but it allowed employees to talk about where they were at a given moment. It's Jinni, what are you doing later this afternoon? Let's talk about where you are. No pressure. Because if it's a pressurized situation, we're back to the, oh God, what do I have to tell them? I didn't do the project. I didn't do the project. That's why it's important for it to be less formal and an experience for both of you. It's an experience for both of you. Because in this process, we also found out that the managers were all tight. They didn't want to do it either. And that was one of like the least favorite function of a manager, to do an employee evaluation. So, I've designed tools for the 90-day that are just outstanding, professional, need help, talk to me. And I have the stronger ones that look at the functions, label them as outstanding, and allow the employee to say, this is, I know I've done my best, but maybe I could do better. If it needs employment, needs employment. If it needs improvement, then allows the employer and the manager to say, these are steps that we can take to make it better for you. Thank you for sharing this information, because I needed it. So the performance management process has become less stressful. And I think that's what we want. So then when we look at performance, we look at the performance of one who may not be able to do their job, and then look at the performance of one who has violated a company policy. So if you're going to do an evaluation on someone because of their performance, then it's done because of the inability to meet the expectations of the position. And then you look at, why is that? What happened? If it's attendance, a little bit more direct. If you're not there, you can't do the job. And that's what employees will tell you. You know that as owners and supervisors, you know that. So you don't want to put the employee in that position, but you've got to discern, why aren't you meeting these expectations? Do you need more training? Is it something else? Often it's been people have need their glasses changed, their prescription changed. People had issues where their chair wasn't right. I mean, there were things that we could change. And then we looked at the position descriptions itself. But if you've got a clear definition of what that performance is all about, then it's a good place for you to start. Then you look at strategies for reducing attrition and turnover in small and medium companies. And this is where HR becomes so important, because it allows us to not prove our value, but demonstrate how valuable we are to our employers, are in our companies, or as owners, because attrition is the loss of an employee for a variety of reasons. Turnover is because someone left for a variety of reasons. Termination, mutual agreement, health. There's a lot of reasons why there's terminations. And where small and medium-sized businesses often miss the mark is we don't capitalize or capture that information. So how do you manage this? You manage it through employee retention strategies. You come up with ways how you can save someone. They have to be savable, but you have to have a strategy to do it and work with them. I find that the exit interviews are the best ways to get information, because you're only capturing it from people who are leaving your organization for a better job, or they're leaving an organization because of a supervisor that they can't work with any longer, or they're leaving the organization for whatever. And so it's best to have it. It's best to incorporate exit interviews into your practice. And then you look at that turnover statistic and analysis, and you determine, how can I use this to make employees want to stay with us longer? Because you realize as owners what it's done to your training budget, because you have to bring someone in to do it. These are the kinds of things that These are the kinds of things that I had wanted to share with you. You look at the organizational success and stability when you manage attrition. You look at statistics on the impact of the pandemic on small and medium-sized businesses, because we're still experiencing it. These are all the reasons why. You make data-driven hiring decisions. Use assessments and analytics to predict performance. And that may cost something, but it's worth it. It's worth it. And then you can also get some of these tools on apps, measuring diversity and inclusion metrics, tracking the return on your investment of recruitment efforts. You look at how much you put out there and how much that individual met those expectations. And when you find out, or the statistics prove that that individual was not the most qualified person in the end, then you tweak the recruitment for his replacement. So I'm just going to share some topics on contractors, because I think this is huge for us, who are workers who are changing the way owners are looking at their labor and market force. The benefits of these are 1099s or contractors. These are their benefits, why we bring them in. The most important one is no overtime. They're flexible and we can suffer by their flexibility. But what you always have to remember is that they're not employees, and you can't treat them like employees. They're in the position of being a 1099 because it's the perfect job for them, because they want to make money. They're willing to work until they get what they want, and then they'll leave. And they are not entitled to overtime again. And most of them don't want full-time. Major challenge with them is sometimes 1099s or contractors can be risky because they're very flexible. Offer advantages to companies whose business model can be and is in an ever-changing workforce. That's the plus, because you're bringing them in based on their skills. And I also want to add that you'll be getting a copy of this. Owner's concern is cultural impact on employees. And that's the full-time and part-time people who think that they're there to replace their job. It's during your staff meetings with that population where you let them know they're here to do a specific position because we're overloaded. I can't give this to you. Make them feel comfortable that they're not there to replace them. Overall work productivity is really their concern. Schedule work options that primarily fit their individual needs. And that's it. It's about what you need, what you can't delegate because you don't have the person internally, and how you can get a 1099. There are workers who are not employees, do not share the same workplace protections and benefits as employees. There are workers, often I don't like to use cheaper, but it's a phrase that was applied to them as gig employees, but they can be less expensive, or based on the project, they can be more expensive to hire than a traditional employee. Why? Because a traditional employee, to hire that person, they'd have to have benefits. You'd have to take deductions out. That's why it's so important for you to ask those questions. You have to furnish 1099 to workers, which is introduced by a W-9. You give them a W-9, you send them a 1099. Employers must not deduct taxes from workers' earnings as a 1099. It's up to them to be responsible for their 1099. I have some factoids for you, which we've gone over, are prohibited from withholding taxes. They bear the responsibility of their own taxes. They're independent, and so on. It is advisable for both the employer and the 1099 worker to often consult an attorney or tax professional to avoid any legal issues. I wanna really thank you for being a part of this discussion today. I hope that I've answered some questions for you. And again, I always speak about what my practice is, and it's about values and fostering an atmosphere of mutual respect, transparency, and open-mindedness, which translates into opportunities for change. So I think right now I see some questions. Isman, do you want to give me some questions? See, I don't think they know back. Let me see if I can look at get some questions for us. Hold on, guys. I am actually, I can stop sharing. And let's look at some questions if I can.
Hi, Jinni. Yes, so we have a couple of questions.
Okay, thank you.
If you can leave your screen on, please, for the presentation, just in case we.
Excuse me, you want me to go back to my presentation?
Yeah, that
Sure,
would be
no
perfect,
problem.
please,
No
just in
problem.
case we need to go back to any slides.
Okay. Can you see it?
Yeah, I can see it.
Good. All right.
Okay, so we got a question from Yero
Mhm.
and asking, do you want reference Reiki making the offer? So they're asking, is there a resource or templates for the necessary documents?
For making the offer?
Yes.
Yes, there are. I mean, you know, Google is like the god or goddess of everything, and you can find a good offer letter on Google. I would, you know, make sure that it reflects your culture, and the most important thing about it is that you don't include that it's an annual salary and leave it. But there are templates. Organizations can provide you a template, but you can get a good template off Google.
Okay, thank you. So Elena is asking, one of the concerns I have is language equity. Where there is no language equity plan in place, how can one stay up to date on resources, changes, translation resources, etc.?
I'm sorry, when there's no what equity?
When there is no language equity plan in place, how can you stay up to date on resources, changes, translation resources, etc.?
I mean, are you talking from an employer's position or from an employee's position?
Guessing this is from an employer. Yeah, NJ employers.
I think that there are, and if I understand this question correctly, there's enough information out there and firms that can help you with that. They can help you with the translations. They can help you, they can help you with the cultural fit that your organization needs to be successful.
Perfect. Elena, I hope that answered your questions. If you, I think you need more clarification, Elena, could you please write it in the Q&A? And then Elena also asked Jinni, do you have a list of useful templates for NJ employers? And
Yes, I mean, Rock-Bailey does, but I know that they're available out there. What you do is you list the documents that you want, whether it's a performance evaluation or whether it's a suite of them. Like Rock-Bailey has a tool. You want a firm that has a tool of documents that they can share with you or sell to you or direct you to. You want a tool of them, but you can individually look for tools online. You just have to make sure that they meet the company's culture and that they don't have anything illegal in there, because there are still some that are floating around. But that's where an HR toolkit comes into place, because you can get an application, you can get performance evaluations. I also recommend, which I didn't get into here, when it comes to performance challenges, you need to write them up, quote unquote, and you will them up. And there's content in those documents that you need. The date of the infraction, was there a witness, what the witness said. And that's how you lay your documentation out for the organization, especially for owners and for the supervisors. And it's also good for the employee that may be having a challenge. But those documents are out there. They are available, let me tell you that.
Thank you, Jinni. And also everyone just know that you can, if you need any consultation, you can reach out to Jinni. We
Yes.
have put on the links in the chat. You can request counseling at no cost with NJSBDC.
Mhm.
So, Jinni, we have 2 more questions to go.
Yes.
Abe asked, are there ways that HR can work more effectively with unions?
No. So, I mean, this is really a great question for me because I have a master's degree in union relations. I think now communication is so important, and the unions that I have had the opportunity to work with, have been open to more company changes and vice versa, because it's gonna cost money either way. And I think that communication is important. And I know that on the employer side, if they sense that a union is brewing, they're gonna do as much to give the employees what they want, so they don't have to have a union. Let's just be open about that. But I think it's the communication that's important. Because I know of situations right now, not throughout the organization, but a pocket of a department within an organization unionized. And it was really the best for both parties, because the company wasn't really able to get the best qualified person, and the union wasn't really able to manage this particular discipline, because I don't want to give them away. And maybe on this particular discipline. So when the union was voted in, the HR and the union formed a very, very good relationship. And it's not like the company always wins. It doesn't. But companies know when they're wrong. And a union will make them fess up to it. But I believe that there's hope, and unions are not as big as they were. And that has a lot about generational knowledge as well. But I think there is a way that we can work better. I guess we have to see what AI says about that.
Definitely.
Right? What does AI say? Go ahead.
Right. So we have the last question from Yerl, who's asking, who should conduct the exit interview? Is the problem? Is it with the manager or owner?
Well, if the problem was with the manager, no. The owner should do it. But it's usually a decentralized function. But in small organizations, the owner does the exit interview. And your exit interviews are only done on people who are leaving, voluntarily leaving. If they have left for cause, then you're not going to do an exit interview on them. And you should be prepared for that. But the owners in a small organization will do it. Most of the time they know the reason, but you want to capture it so you can use it to improve your brand, to improve your internal communications.
Okay, I don't think we're having more questions. Just everyone that is asking about Indeed or LinkedIn or any HR recruitment platforms know that we're having an event coming up on March that you can register about it. Register and learn more about it. Jinni is going to be with us again on that date. So yeah, Jinni, I don't know if you want to say anything else.
No, but I do think, I mean, that if they do have a strong question about HR, then they should reach out. And I could give them some individual counseling on that, even if it comes to the kinds of documents that you need in an organization, so you don't feel as if you're recreating them. I can give you a list of documents that you would need. So feel
Definitely.
free, to schedule an appointment.
Yes, and I just dropped a message with a couple of things and links
Mhm.
that you can take a look at, and then you can request no-cost business consultations with Jinni on it. Jinni, I'll share my screen.
Okay, I'll start.
So everyone Uzma had to leave, but and that's why you're seeing just a black screen and a different voice right now. I'm just prepping to conclude the webinar. Just so you know, we're having Vanessa joining us next Tuesday as part of our upcoming webinars for a session on register your business in New Jersey with no cost NJSBDC assistant. Same time, same I will say location, which is online, and then you can just register by scanning the QR code right here. I'll just leave it up for a couple of seconds so you have a few minutes so you can have more information and register for it. So hopefully that gave you a couple of time. That gave you time to register for the event. If not, you can always visit our website, njsbdc.com, see what are the upcoming events, and also have a list and a library of past webinars that we have done. Know that we are here for you. NJSBDC has helped 15,000 plus small businesses grow with no cost small business consulting, training and events starting at zero cost, and exclusive of small business resources. If you want to learn more about NJSBDC or again request counseling, you can point your camera here and tap the link that is going to show up. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us at the emails that have been put in the chat. And that's all for us. Hope you have a great rest of the week, and I hope you have a great weekend. Thank you all for joining us today.